Hello everyone, my name is Josh and welcome to today's video on the equations of graphs. Now, when it comes to finding the equations of graphs, there's lots of different topics that this can cover. So I'm just going to pick some of them today that to my memory come up in GCSE, but if there's other important topics that you want me to go through after seeing the end of this video, then just let me know. So the first example I'm going to give you is finding the equation of a linear graph from 2 points. So say for example, so we know the graph is going to be linear. That means that it's in the style y equals mx plus c. And say for example in a question they give us 2 points that the graph goes through. So just say 0, 3 and 4, 7 it goes through. Now, this doesn't look like a lot of information to go off of for us to find the equation of this graph. But we'll just start off with what we know and try and figure out what we can. So here, m is our gradient. So the gradient of a graph, it's got the equation, the change. I won't use that notation because you might not know that notation yet, but it's the change in y over the change in x. So as we know, in these coordinates, we've got x value, then y value. And they will give you 2 points in the order that the graph goes through them. So in order to figure out our gradient here, what we need to do is the y coordinates, like the second y coordinate minus the first y coordinate. So we'll say y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So in the example that we're going through here, y2 we'll take from here to be 7. y1, so subtract y1, which we take to be 3, over change in x, so x2 here is 4, and x1 is 0. So that gives us an equation of 4 over 4, and that is equal to 1. So that we know m in this equation, our gradient, is 1. So that means currently we have an equation of the graph in the format y equals x plus c, just subbing in m equals 1. So now that we've got that, we need to try and find c. So in order to find c, what we will do is substitute one of these points into our equation. So we know that any point it gives us that the graph passes through, that means that at any particular point, say here, we know that x is equal to 4 and y is equal to 7. And at this point that the graph goes through, x is equal to 0, y is equal to 3, which does actually tell you in itself what the y-intercept is, spoiler alert, but I'll show you how to solve it anyway for a case where you're not given an x-coordinate of 0. So we know y equals x plus c, so let's take this second point just for example, and substitute in our values. So 7 equals 4 plus c. Just putting y is 7, x is 4, and then to solve for c, we just rearrange. Y equals 7 minus 4, which equals 3. So that means our overall equation for this graph is y equals x plus 3. So then they might ask you to plot this graph. If they don't, then that's it. You've found the equation of the graph, that's all you need to do. But if they ask for a graph of this, we need to figure out how to plot it. So a good way to plot it, you know here that if x is equal to 0, so at the origin here, x is equal to 0, y should be equal to 3. So it needs to go through a point here of 0, 3. And you know that if y is equal to 0, x is equal to minus 3, because minus 3 plus 3 equals 0. So when y equals 0, which is along this line, x equals minus 3. So you know that the graph goes through this point minus 3. So then all you have to do is draw A straight... Draw a straight line, he says, while failing to draw a straight line. So this is meant to be a straight line, but it's very difficult on the drawing tablet that I've got. So that's your y and x value, and that is how you draw this graph. If you're ever not sure about how to draw a graph that you're told to, what you should do is create an x column and a y column, and then just take some values. So you want to take ones around the origin to start with. So maybe look for ones -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. And this will help you figure out what the shape should be. So at -3, sub that in, y is equal to 0. At -2, y is equal to 1. -1, y is equal to 2. At 0, y is equal to 3. And then it goes 4, 5, 6. So just substituting in each one, and that gives you a list of values which you can use. And if you just draw the graph and imagine like draw on all your x coordinates, so like 1, 2, 3, etc., and then just draw the graph based on that if you're ever unsure when it tells you to plot a graph, and you should be able to get it. Okay, so this time I'm going to go through another question similar to the previous, but I'm sneakily going to make sure that the question comes out with a negative gradient just so you can still see what to do. So this time the question that we are going to do is you're going to get the equation of a graph that goes through the points 0, 1, and then 4, -7. So those are the 2 points that the graph goes through. So if we wanted to like sketch a graph that did this, we'd know that it goes through 0, 1, so that's 1, and then at -7 and 4, there's a crossing point there and there, so we know the graph looks like that but straight. Imagine that's straight. So in order to get our gradient, we do the same thing as before. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So this time y2 is -7, y1 is 1, x2 is 4, and x1 is 0. So this time we get -8 over 4, which is equal to -2. So our gradient is -2. So again, we've got a point where x is 0, so we actually know what the y-intercept is, but what we're going to do is sub a value in just to continue to show you how to solve for it. So y equals mx plus c is the equation of this line. So y equals -2x plus c because we've solved for m. So now we'll take this point and substitute it into our equation. So -7 equals -2 times 4 plus c. So -7 equals -8 plus c. And so taken to the side, c equals 1. So our equation for this line is y equals -2x plus 1. So again, that's it. That's how we can quickly, easily do this. Now, again, plotting it, you just do the exact same thing. Like, if you've got these 2 points, plot these 2 points to start with, and then just draw a straight line through them. And if you're given like squared paper or graph axes, the way that you can check it is just by substituting values into a little table and then just plot those values on your axes and draw a straight line through them. And that would be a quick, easy way to do it. So similarly, you might not actually just be given 2 points, you might be given a graph that can be anything arbitrary. So let's just say there, and this goes through 2, and this goes through -2. If you're just given a graph like this, and all of these are like labeled up so you can see where it is, all you need to do to solve this is take 2 points that the graph crosses. It can be any 2 points you like, but you create your 2 points and then you solve it the same way. So like, say here on my graph, you could take a point of 4, 2. You could also take the point -3 there, and then -4 there. So then you just say that your 2 points are 4, 2. Sorry. So then you just say that your 2 points are -3, -4, and 4, 2. So the most important thing if you're reading 2 values off the graph is you pick the values left to right. So you want your smallest x value first, and then your biggest x value second, because you need to make sure you get these the right way around, otherwise you'll end up with a negative gradient when you shouldn't have. For your general knowledge, like, you'll know if your gradient is right, because if a gradient is negative, it means it goes that way, and if a gradient, let's just label that, it would be negative if it goes that way, and it will be positive if it goes that way. So that's just how you'd know, based on the shape of the graph, whether your value is right or not. If it slopes up, then it's positive gradient. If it slopes down, it's negative gradient. So I will take you through a different example. So this time I'm going to take you through an example with 2 parallel lines. So if we're given a graph, and there's 2 lines plotted on the graph, and these 2 lines run parallel to each other, that helps us solve the equation of the graph very easily. So say for this top graph, we're given it has the equation y equals 2x plus 1. And we need to find the equation of this graph. And we can see that this graph goes through the point 1 minus... Okay, we can see that this point goes through... We can see that this graph goes through 1, 0. So, when you have parallel lines, so this is notation that I'm going to use for parallel. For parallel lines, gradient of one parallel line is equal to the gradient of another parallel line. So the gradient here, m1, is equal to the gradient here, m2. Because these lines are parallel, so they never meet, so their slope has to be the same. If their slopes weren't the same, at some point before infinity, the graphs would cross each other. So for parallel lines, the gradient of one is always equal to the gradient of the other. So we know that this line we're trying to find the equation of, its gradient will still be equal to 2. So we know for y equals mx plus c in this graph, m will be equal to 2. So we've got as far as this, which cuts out a step for us, which is really useful. Okay, so because of this, a lot of the work from the previous questions is cut out. So now all we need to do to finish finding the equation of this parallel line is to substitute a point in. So we know from the graph that the point 1, 0 is crossed by this line. So we just substitute this into the equation. So 0 equals 2 plus c. So we know that c is therefore minus 2. So overall, our equation for this parallel line is y equals 2x minus 2. And so this method is very quick and easy, can be used to score you some easy marks in an exam, because you don't even need to do anything to find the gradient. You just know it's going to be the same as the other line they give you, and then just solve for c using a point from the graph. So the final question type I'm going to go through in this video is perpendicular lines. Okay, so two perpendicular lines we're going to have. One like this, which has the equation y equals 3x minus 1. And we're going to have another one which goes like this through it. Now, we know that this angle here is 90 degrees because it's perpendicular. So we'll also have the information from the graph that one point on this line, this won't be given, this we'll just read off. 1 point on the graph is 3 minus 3, sorry. So we have the point 3 minus 3 is on this graph. Now that isn't given, that we've just read off, but I can't show you how to read it off from this because I haven't got stuff installed to properly do it. So you would just have squared paper in an exam with a graph drawn on it, and then you just read off the coordinates of a point on that line. So for perpendicular lines, m1 equals minus 1 over m2. So this is called the negative reciprocal. So you can also think of it as the product of these two gradients, m1 times m2 is equal to minus 1. The two gradients can be multiplied together to make minus 1. I prefer to keep it in this form because this is the form we need to solve it in. So for this equation, we've got m1 is equal to 3, just from this, that 3 there. So that means that m2 is equal to minus 1 over m1, which is equal to minus 1/3. So just like that, we've got the gradient of a perpendicular line. Again, much simpler than if you've just got to get 2 points. So that means we've got an equation in the form y equals minus 1/3 x plus c. So in order to finish up this question and solve what that value is, we just put our point 3 minus 3 into it. So minus 3 equals minus 3 times 1/3 plus c. So minus 3 equals minus 1 plus c. So c equals minus 2. And that means that the overall equation of this line is y equals minus 1/3 x minus 2. And that's this line just here. And that's just how to solve for perpendicular graphs. So yeah, those are 3 methods of finding the equation of a line. The most difficult one, in my opinion, is from 2 points because you've got to remember the gradient equation. Whereas for parallel and perpendicular lines, you can just parallel take the gradient from the other line. Perpendicular, you just do minus 1 over that gradient and then solve for c. But yeah, all 3 of these methods will work and give you an answer in the exam if that's what they're asking for. And then, remembering my tip from earlier, if they tell you to plot a line that you've worked out from 2 points, all you do, draw a little table, get some values in, and then draw it based on those values. Just plot those individual points and draw a line through them. So that, as far as I know, that is as complicated as it has to go for working out the equations of lines of graphs. But if I'm wrong on that, just let me know. And if you want me to cover some other topic about this that I'm not, then tell me and I will go through that as well. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it's helped, and I hope you've learned how to use these methods. You can find more questions online to just solve the same way, and you should get the right answers. If you're particularly stuck on one and need me to talk you through it, just message me and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you have any topics you'd like me to make a video on, just let me know either through comments or message me somehow, and I will make a video on it when I get the chance. So thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you next time.